Hello everyone and welcome back to my opinion. The Rajasthan Royals beating the Mumbai Indians by 23 runs, and I think the Mumbai Indians are doing really disappointed by this loss because they needed 65 runs of the last 6 overs and really 59 of 35 after the 6 from Tilak Verma of R. Ashwin. And I'll get to his innings in a bit. It was an incredible innings, especially for a 19-year-old. Really, after him being dismissed, the fact that Ashwin gave him a send-off, it really showed how much he would have actually got into his head. Someone who he's never bowled to at all. So, a great innings from him. I will get to his innings, but after his dismissal, it was a slide from the Mumbai Indians. I think that they needed 65 of 36, and then they needed 29 of the last over to win. So 36 runs scored in 5 overs until the last over, with wickets being lost as well. And it was a combination of Rajasthan Royals really bowling well in those last 6 overs, and apart from Trent Bolt's 11-run over, really no momentum in the last 6 overs of Mumbai Indians at all. And even that 11-run over came when the run rate was, I think, at 17 or something. So not hurting the bowling side too much. And yeah, in the end, it was a good win for the Rajasthan Royals. For quite a bit of that second innings, you thought Mumbai Indians were on course to win this game. But pretty much the turning point was after Tilak Verma was dismissed. It really... the Yuzvendra Chahal took 2 wickets in his over, which I'll get to in a bit, because that pretty much put the pressure on Karen Pollard, and the seamers were excellent in restricting him. So regarding the 11s of these two teams, the Rajasthan Royals, there was one change. Maybe this was a forced change or something that they would have just thought of doing because of Coulternal's performance in the last game as well. But since Coulternal was injured, they would have probably had to replace him with Navdeep Saini, so not a surprising inclusion there. Maybe they would have also wanted to replace him, as I said, because of the runs that he gave. So not surprising, Saini is in the side. But since they had that 4th overseas slot free, I thought they could either play... I would have either played Fandaduson instead of Padikkal or Neesham instead of Parag. Now, especially in T20 cricket, how short the innings is, you'd want your best batsmen to be facing the most amount of deliveries. Josh Buttler and Sanju Samson are by far the best batsmen in this lineup, and with the form Samson's in, I think it does him injustice to be batting anywhere below number 3. And so if Padikkal is batting at number 4, he takes, like you saw in that first game that Rajasthan played, he takes a bit of time to get going. And even if he scores that 130 odd strike rate, 140, if he faces, I don't know, 20 odd deliveries, someone like a Rashi Fandaduson will be able to get going straight away and really be that power player. So I think that each player in the side can continue from where they left off. You've got Buttler, Jaiswal, Samson, Fandaduson, and Hetmai. I mean, that's an ultra-attacking top 5. And with the runs involved in most of the games this season, you probably have to be slightly nitpicky on someone who's batting out of position, still scoring at a good strike rate, but in this case, you just want that little bit more. And also with the number 6 slot as well, if Padikkal plays in this 11, what you've got is, if he doesn't go as quickly as someone like a Fandaduson would go, Riyan Parag at number 6 is fairly inexperienced, and the consistency hasn't really been there, despite the fact we have seen glimpses. Yes, he hasn't really batted too much in this tournament. He's faced less than 10 balls, or less than 9 balls in both his first 2 games. 9 balls in the first game and 4 balls in this game. But certainly with the experience and the consistency factor, I think playing Jimmy Neesham at that number 6 role, before I get to actually playing him, I think if he doesn't really pull his weight at that number 6, you have Ashwin at 7. So if you're looking at power hitting in this team, consistently you have to rely on Buttler, Samson, and Hetmai. And Hetmai has a lot of ability. I'm sure he could hit from earlier on as well. He could walk in from earlier on as well, but really, it puts ultra pressure on those 3 to perform on a consistent basis, and you'd more often than not want Buttler and Samson to be firing at the same time, so like in the same innings. So because of that, if you play Jimmy Neesham and say in place of Riyan Parag, what you have is that extra assurance at number 6 to aid Shimron Hetmai, and also a 6th bowling option. Because Riyan Parag, yes, he bowls, but you don't really consider him as a sixth bowling option, and so I just think since his side is there's a weak point bowling at the death, and I'm not saying Jimmy Neesham is going to help with that too much. But maybe if you want to get a few overs in here and there, Jimmy Neesham would still be a decent option to kind of juggle around with. So even without those changes, or one of those two changes, even without one of those two changes, they still looked a fairly strong side. And for the Mumbai Indians, an unchanged Evans and Suryakumar Yadav was still injured. And Mumbai Indians winning the toss and choosing to bowl first. Bumrah bowling 2 overs in the power play, tidy overs 1 and 3 of the innings, and getting the wicket of Jaiswal where he tried to clip the ball to the leg side, and the catch was taken by Tim David at square leg. But Josh Buttler from the second over of the innings really got into his work, pulling Daniel Sands for 6 over mid-wicket. And I really think there was 1 over in the power play where overall, if you're looking at the score after 6 overs, the innings probably needed that impetus, because a 26-run over where Josh Buttler took Basil Thampi apart, you've got a drastic change in fortunes from really 3 for 35, taking integral wickets, really great players at in integral phases of the innings, to getting hit for 26 runs in an over and only bowling 1. So I think that it's just the fact that even after that, though, you've got 22 for 2 in 5 overs if they hadn't got that 26 run over, so they needed that. And with a wicket falling on the last over of the power play, with Timur Mills dismissing Devdutt Padikkal. So really, Mumbai Indians would have felt fairly unscathed despite the fact there was a 26 run over in the mix. And I think for the initial stages of especially the initial stages of the partnership between Samson and Buttler, there was never a stage that the Rajasthan Royals weren't going at a good rate. The scorecard did look quite good, and hence why they got to 193 for 8, which even then was they got closer to they got to that total while being limited in the last 3 overs. But also I think the over before those last 3 overs played a huge part, and I'll get to that. But I'm saying because the run rate wasn't being the batsmen are looking really good when they played, but I just feel like the run rates weren't exorbitant. So you thought the Mumbai Indians are still in this game, considering there'll be a few runs involved in this game. And I would say around the end of the 13th over, you could say 123 for 2 in 13 overs, and then they would have thought, okay, they have this launch pad. We have to get both these 2 out now, because then this could get away from us here. And before that, there was an over especially where we went for 21 runs from Murugan Ashwin. So I think for a while in the initial stages of that partnership, you thought that it was fairly manageable despite the fact that rates were, I think, in the 9s or something. And after that point, you kind of just thought 123 and 13, could they really get away from us? They've provided that launch pad for themselves. But 3 overs after that, which only scored 21 runs being scored, and the wicket of Sanju Samson, which I think was a key factor in slowing down the progress in the next 3 overs of the Rajasthan Royals. Karan Pollard for his first 3 overs bowled admirably, considering in place of Basil Thampi bowling his 3 of Basil Thampi's 4 overs, let's say, 1 for 24 in 3 overs, and you'd think 144 for 3 in 16 overs, Mumbai Indians would have taken that quite a bit. And just when you thought Rajasthan Royals, the boundaries or the big overs were drying up, you really thought the Mumbai Indians only had 1 more over to really think about that as much. Because in the last 3 overs, you have Mills, Bumrah, Mills, and you know what they do at the death. And so 1 over bowled by Karan Pollard, who had bowled really well in his 3 overs before, then surely it couldn't go wrong. Instead, it goes for 26 runs, Karan Pollard bowling on the leg side, even with the fine leg up in the circle, and with Hetmeyer, the amount of times he accesses mid-wicket for his boundaries, I think that really feeding him his strengths, 26 runs, and that was the innings that really that over really set off Hetmeyer's innings of 35 of 14. And in his first 2 games, 32 of 13, 35 of 14, 2 brilliant contributions from him was required after 3 quiet overs. And also, I thought he was probably the best player, let's say, at number 6 in the last season, where he really got these he played these quick knocks at the end for the Delhi Capitals. And yeah, I think that a great innings from him, much needed. And from there, 144 for 3 to 170 for 3 and 17. And you've got them probably a more realistic way to get to 200. But even after that, 23 for 5 in the last 3 overs. And you just think how much easier the Mumbai Indians job would have been, how even more easier it would have been had Karen Pollard over even gone for, let's say, 14 runs rather than 26. And I just think that they made life unnecessarily difficult for themselves. I think even with Josh Butler's 100 of 68, with him admitting in the mid-innings interview that he probably slowed down a bit and they could have got more. He said they would have taken 193 at kind of before they started batting if you told them that that's what they'd get. And I still think it was a very good score for this first innings, but I think that yeah, he would have thought that they could have got a few. They could have got a few more, and he said the same thing. But it just goes to show that despite the fact that the Rajasthan Royals the batsmen pretty much were in control, the 3 players that got major contributions were in control for the entirety of their innings, really, even if Josh Butler slowed down a bit. I think that 193, and that too when you've got 73 runs given in 3 overs. And what was really not great for Mumbai Indians at all was that in each of the 3 phases of the innings, you had 1 over that went for 20 plus runs. And yeah, I just thought that was quite an unnecessary trouble put on them. And you still thought Mumbai could chase this total down, considering that their top 6 especially is quite a good one, or looks like a very good one on paper. And with the death bowling frailties in the Rajasthan Royals bowling attack. And certainly before they actually walked out to bat, I think that, in fact, before I talk about that innings, I'm going to talk about Bumrah, 3 for 17 and 4, Timur Moores, 3 for 35 and 4, and Karen Pollard, 1 for 46 and 1, which 3 overs are really good, 1 over went the distance. And you're looking at Bumrah and Moores' figures, 6 for 52 and 8 overs, world-class stuff if you combine those two. It's just... And Daniel Sam's none for 32 and 4, you take that in this situation as well. And yet you've got Basil Tampi, Murugan Ashwin, Karen Pollard giving 121 to 20 odd run over in each of their overs, and yeah, in each of their quotas, let's say, and that was pretty much the thing that made the difference. So regarding the Mumbai Indians innings, before they even walked out to bat, you thought there were probably a few people that you could say, mainly 2 that you could say would have to do the bulk of the scoring in this innings, and probably would be more realistic if you probably allotted them the role to do that. Because with the players I thought you wouldn't be able to rely on as much. Tilak Verma, I didn't think he'd play such an outstanding knock. I even if he hadn't got that great of a score for these first 2 games, I still would have given him a chance for the next one. But I'm saying that because again, he's a young player, and it would be quite unfair to replace him after 2 games. But I think that he did show, so he set a very good first impression, 22 in his previous game, and with 61 of 33, with some of the shots that he played, I didn't think he would do that as well in this innings. But considering what I thought from before, I thought with his inexperience, you wouldn't be able to rely on him that much to play a major part. But I certainly thought he'd play a bit of a part. Anmolpreet Singh hasn't played many games in the IPL. When he has played, hasn't really shown too much. Karen Pollard, the thing is for him, the thing he doesn't like is when you bowl outside his hitting arc, when you bowl really wide, and that he struggles to get those away for boundaries. I think that also if you really bowl at his body, bowling quick bounces, he doesn't like that either, and also against wrist spin. And this attack contains all those 3 attributes. And so straight away, even the other bowlers, you'd think in Trent Bolt and Ravichandran Ashwin, 2 world-class bowlers, you'd think Karen Pollard's probability of getting a decent contribution in this game would probably not be too high. Tim David has hardly played games in the IPL, but you think it's still a step up, and you wouldn't really know if you could rely on him fully or not. And so really the 2 main players you thought you had to rely on were Ishan Kishan and Rohit Sharma, which brings me on to the first innings. I think the first 2 wickets the Rajasthan Royals took, they were quite lucky to take those because the overs themselves, where the wickets fell, were quite poor. Rohit Sharma was looking really good for his 10 of 5 balls. On his 5th delivery, he just creamed the ball straight to Riyan Parag at point, who took a great catch. And Prasidh Krishna was fairly lucky because the over wasn't great. And Anmolpreet Singh dismissed in the 4th over, the end of the 4th over. And I think the ball, it looked like it just stuck in the wicket a bit. And during the time, that 1 millisecond where it was stuck in the wicket, Anmolpreet Singh committed quite a bit into the shot. And he just propped it up, kind of propped it straight into Devdutt Padikkal's hands off Navdeep Saini's bowling. And 2 overs which weren't great by themselves. And it just shows that Sanju Samson didn't bowl Prasidh Krishna for a consecutive 2 overs. He took him off after the 1 over because even he probably thought he didn't want the game. They got away with it at that time, and he probably didn't want to take another risk. And the partnership that followed, the innings was in the hands of 2 very capable batsmen in Ishan Kishan and Tilak Verma. A partnership of 81 of 54, and some of the shots played in this innings were sublime. And Tilak Verma playing some great shots off the seamers, but mostly the shots against spin were the ones that really, especially towards the end. I know I'm talking not in this partnership, but I'm saying the reverse sweep he hit off Ashwin. I just thought that was an incredible shot. And I really thought that was the highlight of his innings, really. Yes, he played some orthodox shots, but the audacity, really, that you thought of him playing that shot was just an outstanding innings. But if you look at the partnership itself, 81 of 54, I think there was 2 sides to it. One, you thought you would expect both of those to really, especially Ishan Kishan, to accelerate towards the end, and because there wasn't really much accelerating left to do for Tilak Verma with 61 of 33 all in all. But I'm saying that you would have thought Ishan Kishan would have accelerated from that point, and you thought they were establishing a foundation to chase the score. But also, Ishan Kishan would have been disappointed with 54 of 43, striking at 125 when you need 194 runs to win. And you got the feeling he would have made up for things had he still been batting at the end, but he was dismissed off Trent Bolt. Navdeep Saini, luckily, was able to come back on again because I think he had a bit of a concussion kind of thing when taking the catch to dismiss Ishan Kishan. He bowled 1 over more in the game, and the 3rd over, which he bowled to Karan Pollard, was an excellent one where, yes, he had a lot of runs to defend, that would be an understatement, but he really executed his plans well. And after that point, it was really, the onus was on Tilak Verma to continue. Yes, he had an insurance policy with someone like a Karan Pollard batting with him. And after that 6 of Ashwin, he was dismissed, but because of Ashwin using all his experience bowling, it's slightly slower, the ball hitting the top of off stump, and he was dismissed. A brilliant innings of 61 of 33, and you think with the likes of Pollard and Tim David, 59 of 34 wouldn't be too much for them. And when I say Mumbai Indians made their life a bit difficult, this is what I mean. So, 2 things here. With Karan Pollard, Tim David, and maybe Daniel Sams. With Tim David, I saw him play 3 ball innings and all against the spinners, and straight away you probably got the impression he's not too comfortable against spin, especially spin of this quality. Karan Pollard's never been comfortable against wrist spin, and Daniel Sams you wouldn't think is as comfortable against spin, especially this quality of spin. So if you're wanting to hit a 10 and over run chase off these spinners, I guess the game plan would have been play out the 2 overs out of 6 left from the spinners. And if you want to get 50 or 4 balls with the death bowling concerns on paper Rajasthan Royals have, they probably wouldn't mind that too much. But the thing is, with Tim David and Daniel Sams being dismissed in the same Chahal over, that put immense pressure on Karan Pollard, because for Tim David, the ball was quite a good one. I mean, it pitched on leg stump, then turned and bounced. And you'd say if the umpire hadn't given that out, it wouldn't have. The umpire's call would have gone in favour of the batsman in the review, and that would have been a much better situation for the Mumbai Indians, because it would be Pollard and Tim David would be facing pace for the last 4 overs, and maybe with the help of Tim David they would have been able to get closer to the total than they did. But with him being dismissed again off Chahal, a strategic timeout afterwards, and probably the most brainless shot in this innings, because Daniel Sams, you'd think that he wouldn't be as comfortable against spinners as he would against seamers, and you'd think, right, 4 overs of seamers, he can hit a long ball, and what he does is the first ball after the timeout tries to go after Chahal and gets caught by Josh Buttler. I mean, that was such a brainless shot, because with the lack of batting depth this Mumbai Indians side has, yes, Murugan Ashwin can bat, but especially when you need run rates of 10 over and above, you wouldn't really, still at this level, you wouldn't really rely on him too much. He did hit a boundary over cover, but apart from that, the onus was pretty much on Karen Pollard. And even with only facing 4 overs of pace, I thought the Pacers bowled brilliantly to him. I think that Trent Bolt bowling an over at the death, which went for 11 runs, but that was the most expensive over in the death overs. Apart from that, there wasn't really too much. I think that Prasidh Krishna and Navdeep Saini really bowling those wide deliveries, full and wide deliveries to Karen Pollard. And I think with Karen Pollard, I've said this before in my India versus West Indies T20I series videos, he's an anomaly. And I'm saying this because with a batsman that has such weaknesses, as I've said in before in this video, whether if you bowl full and wide, you'd struggle to get those away quite a bit of the time. Certainly get sixes off those quite a bit of the time. And I think that also bowling quick at his body and also the wrist spin. And those 3 challenges are offered by pretty much every attack in the world, really, in white ball cricket. And so, considering that and how successful he's been over his career, you have to give it to him. He is a T20 legend. But I think in the last year or so, teams have really been targeting those weak zones or inhibition zones for Karen Pollard. And it's been working. And he certainly seems to have quite a narrower window of getting the boundaries. Mostly if you bowl a slot ball, he kind of just hits you over long on. I think that certainly with, for example, with Trent Bolt bowling a full toss, hitting him through a square leg. Also, him not really bowling a bad ball at all, but managing to get a flat 6 over mid-wicket. So, certainly has narrow windows of boundary scoring opportunities, I think, and especially as it's been exhibited in the last year or so, when teams have bowled really well to Karen Pollard. And today, I just thought that because of how well they bowled him, it was pretty much inhibited 22 of 24, and they didn't go well for him. And the fact that I think the plan backfired for Mumbai Indians, because they thought, right, if they played the 2 overs out of the spinners, 50 odd runs off 4 overs, but then those bowlers bowl so well that you just don't get near the total at all. So I really think that it was a great performance by the Rajasthan Royals, especially in the last 6 overs. I thought that Mumbai Indians would have been really disappointed, but Rajasthan Royals, they would have thought that they were looking like losing this game, and after Tilak Verma's dismissal, they really got back into it and won it by 23 runs in the end. And for Rajasthan Royals, they're still, for me, a bit of a concern on paper with their death bowling. I think that in this case, yes, they got it right to Karen Pollard, but that's probably because he has, as I said, quite a narrow range of hitting, whereas if you're bowling to some other lineups of players that have a bit more, well, they'll probably be able to score off those deliveries and probably get more boundaries off those deliveries, then you'd think that they'd find it a bit more tough if the bowlers feel and a bit more pressure, because they were also defending 29 runs in the last over or something. The opposition were not getting the required runs off each over at the end. So that was something that went with Rajasthan Royals' favour. Also, when they're chasing big scores, if they have to, which they will, I just think that they probably have to, for me, either play Nisham or Van der Dussen, because I just feel like there'll be too much pressure on Josh Buttler and Sanju Samson, Shimon Hetmai to really get the fast-paced scoring to chase a 200 plus total. Padikkal can still score at a very good strike rate to really give them a platform and join in with either Sanju Samson and Josh Buttler in terms of batting alongside them. But I think that certainly if you're looking at the outright power, Josh Buttler, Samson, Hetmaier, it'll be too much of an onus on them. So either Van der Dussen or Nishan would be needed in my view. And for the Mumbai Indians, I think with their bowling attack, you've seen it's half and half. You've got the players like Bumrah and Mills, and you've got Archer who'll be available hopefully from the next season. But you've also got players like Daniel Sams and Basil Tampi who you don't know what you're going to get from them on a particular day. Daniel Sams, I was surprised with how he went today because he in international cricket he has an economy rate of 12 and over. And with the finishing trio of Pollard, David, Daniel Sams, if they don't show the smarts against the spinners, and if they really get themselves in a bit of a hole and don't give that finishing kick, this lineup has been described as top heavy, and I think that that's what it will certainly be more of. Because if you're looking at Ishan Kishan, Rohit Sharma, Tilak Verma, Suryakumar Yadav when he's back in, that's a very good top 4, and it's still a very good top 6 on paper. But the problem is, if Pollard, Tim David, Daniel Sams don't fire with a lack of batting depth as well, things aren't exactly looking too great. They wouldn't want to play Fabian Allen instead of Daniel Sams because I think in this tournament pace will certainly yes, some of the spinners have had great performances, but Fabian Allen's bowling is also a work in progress. You'll probably get more batting assurance from him than Fabian Allen, but at number 7 you have to bowl 4 overs every game, and you wouldn't think Fabian Allen would be able to do that at this point in time, especially on like the more batting friendly surfaces. And yeah, I think that's the problem for the Mumbai Indians. You've got a batting lineup where Pollard, Tim David, Daniel Sams, despite the fact that you'd think that Pollard, Tim David would come good, maybe Daniel Sams would also come good. When they're facing spinners so far, things don't really seem to be like they'd much rather face the pace, and I think teams may use that to manipulate scoreboard pressure. And the pacers bowl well to someone like a Karan Pollard, Mumbai Indians may struggle getting that finishing kick. And with something which they wouldn't have struggled with the likes of Hardik Pandya, for example, Krunal Pandya on the side. And also, if as I said, with the bowling being half and half, where Bumrah, Tim or Mills, and then you don't exactly know what you're going to get. So that's the issue for me. Tomorrow, CSK and Punjab playing. I think that the best chance, I think with either side, the runs are going to count. I think that with both sides having really good batting lineups, it is going to be, for me, a 400 plus run game, and I hope it is that. It will be a really fun game to watch. I want CSK to win this game, and I think that they'll probably consider their best chance to win this game, considering for CSK, for example, you've got Dwayne Bravo, Dwayne Pretorius based on the latest game through the middle overs, that's what I think it should be. But the Punjab Kings, you've got Rahul Chahar, and you wouldn't who else have you got through the middle overs? You haven't really got anyone. So Arshdeep Singh for me is one of the stars of the IPL, I think, and the fact that I'm saying this, well, he's really bowled. He's been around for, let's say, 2 seasons in the IPL, and yet I think he's got better records than the Red Bull orientated bowlers, quite a few Red Bull orientated bowlers in India, that haven't got to grips completely with the T20 format and have such glaring weaknesses. I think the fact that Arshdeep Singh has proven to really be a good new ball bowler, but especially a good death bowler, he's been outstanding. So I still don't know how they'd go bowling him in the middle overs. I still think at the death bowling, him and Rabala, you'd think that would go okay. But certainly, I hope, I've said this a lot of time, I hope they play Sandeep Sharma as a third seamer and Udian Smith as a fourth. I hope that's the case. And for CSK, they can really, if they negate Rahul Chahar, if they even get some good runs of Rahul Chahar, they'll be confident in the fact that there's no one else in the middle overs of Punjab that can really provide much of a threat. We've seen in both these in these games that against RCB, Kohli and Kohli, Duplessis and Dinesh Karthik really hit their bowling around after the power play. And also against KKR, 51 for 4, and then they just lost the plot. So CSK will have that in the back of their mind, but also CSK will know that their bowling also isn't the greatest either. So an interesting game, and yeah, let's see how this goes. I hope CSK win personally. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Please share this video with your friends. Remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?